Danelle, I'm ready to go when I get the high sign and the approval from Carol and you and McCartney, I guess.
I think we're good. McCartney, wave if we're good.
Yes, you're good.
Okay.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our summer board meeting. It is, as Dr. White correctly said, it's certainly a different time, and hopefully our next meeting will be back where it belongs on the campus at Austin Peay. Before we officially get started, well, not that this is unofficial, but on behalf of the whole board, I'd like to welcome officially Abby Hogan. I see Abby, or I don't see you right now, but I know you're on the call. And also would like to, and Abby, this certainly, as you know, is not the norm either, but we're thrilled to have you on board. We were all obviously very impressed with your background and what you will bring to this board. So welcome to the team. And as well, welcome to the team to Dr. Cronley. We will be hearing and seeing more of you, I know, as the summer goes on, certainly again at our next board meeting, but welcome to both of you. And with that, Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In accordance with TCA 844-108, Section C3, I have to ask two questions of you if you could answer for the record. The first one being, are you able to hear us clearly so that you can participate in this meeting? And the second one is to please identify any persons present in the room with you. So as I call your name, please answer those two questions. Trustee Atkins?
Yes to both.
Trustee Kanata?
Yes, and I'm the
Trustee Carroll?
Yes, and I'm alone.
Trustee Hogan?
Yes, and I'm alone.
Trustee Jenkins?
Yes, I'm alone.
Trustee Luck?
Yes, alone.
Trustee May?
Yes, and I'm alone.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes, and I'm alone.
Trustee Wadia?
Yes, and my wife is within earshot, working as usual.
Trustee O'Malley?
Yes, and I'm alone.
Chairman O'Malley, I do not detect a fiscal quorum pursuant to Executive Order 19 enacted on March 20th, 2020 and extended pursuant to Executive Order 34 enacted on May 6, 2020. This board is able to hold this meeting by electronic means in the absence of a fiscal quorum, with the necessity being to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak.
Thank you. So based on the information provided by Ms. Whiteside, I move that we determine that necessity has been established to hold this meeting in the absence of a physical quorum. Is there a second?
Second.
It is moved and seconded by Mr. Jenkins that necessity has been established to hold this meeting in the absence of a physical quorum. Any discussion? Hearing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins?
Here.
The question is on whether or not necessity has been established. So is that a yes or?
Yes.
Trustee Kanata?
yes.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins?
Yes.
Trustee Luck?
Yes.
Trustee May?
Yes,
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Wadia?
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley?
Yes.
9 yeses.
Thank you. The motion carries and we have a quorum. Please note that there are items on your agenda that need to be adopted. Before I call for a vote, are there any items that you would like extracted from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I move for adoption of the agenda, including the consent agenda items. Is there a second?
second. Trustee May.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins?
Here.
Trustee Kanata?
Yes.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins?
Yes.
Trustee Luck?
Yes.
Trustee May?
Yes,
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Wadia?
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley?
Yes.
9 yeses.
Thank you. The agenda is adopted. The minutes for our March 20th, 2020 board meeting were circulated in advance of the meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
I seconded Catherine Kanata.
Thank you, Catherine. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins?
Here.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Mueller,
Yes.
Trustee Wadia,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley.
And yes, the minutes are approved. At this time, I'd like to now recognize President White, who will introduce today's campus spotlight.
I could not be more proud of Austin Peay. And we wanted to highlight some of the heroes on our campus, people who've really done extraordinary work in response primarily to the COVID-19 crisis. And there's no way to tell you everything that's been done, everything that's been lifted to help our community. And so our public relations team put together a video for you just to give you a few examples. I'd like to, the campus spotlight today is that video, and I'd like you to turn your attention to it.
And I don't think any of us came out here thinking we were going to be superheroes and save the world. But it is a very, very helpless feeling when you have no beds and there's just like, there's literally nothing you can do. Like, that's been my role lately, is just holding people's hands. And you know, they're alone, they're not allowed to have visitors, and they know that they're dying.
But when there's like a hard question or a response like this, it's the GIS center is the one that answers that call.
So we started working since March 20th with BPSU students, faculty, and staff to produce PPE. At present, we've put out 200 plus boxes of face shields. That equates to about close to 8,000 of the frames and 80,000 on the acetate sheets.
We hope that, through the collaboration, we'll come up with a very strong and doable plan that allows for the safe return for all members of the campus, right? For the students, the staff, and the faculty alike.
Because I feel like anything that I can do to help somebody, anything that I can do to kind of give back is always in the forefront of anything that I do.
Basically, as we change the variables in the model, we can predict what will happen if we don't socially distance, or if we have larger class sizes, and it will be able to predict sort of what might happen and or guide us in how our interventions can be implemented to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
You know, if there's a need and someone on campus can provide that, I mean, I think that's the Austin Peay way. I don't think that's just the chemistry department way. That's just what we do.
Chairman?
Thank you. Am I muted? Let's see. No. That was, wow. That's the Austin Peay way. Can't say it much better than that. Thank you, Dr. White. I'd now like to recognize Trustee Mueller, Chair of the Academic Affairs Committee, to give us a report of her committee meeting yesterday.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to present my report from yesterday's Academic Affairs Committee meeting. The committee reviewed the following action items, or the following information items, I'm sorry. Interim Provost Meisch presented an update on the status of Masters of Speech Language Pathology and the preliminary outcome of the recent SAC-COC Substantive Change Committee visit for Creekwood High School, a new off-campus instructional site. The committee reviewed and approved the following action items, which you approved by today's consent. Elevation of applied exercise science concentration to standalone major of BS in kinesiology with concentrations in exercise science and pre-professional. Change of degree designation, Bachelor of Science Radiologic Technology, BSRT, to Bachelor of Science Radiologic Science, BSRS. Revisions to Policy 2010, undergraduate and graduate academic retention standards. The committee reviewed and approved the following action items, which will be presented to you for action in today's meeting. Consideration of tenure appointments. Tenure upon appointment, Dr. Kelly Kleinhans. Tenure upon appointment, Dr. Emily Lean. Tenure upon appointment, Dr. Maria Cronley. The committee also reviewed and will make a recommendation regarding the appeal of the negative 2019-2020 tenure decision for Dr. Nita Basim. This recommendation will be presented to you for action in today's meeting. That concludes my report. I move that the board approve the minutes of the June 4th Academic Affairs Committee as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes of the Academic Affairs Committee. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins?
Here.
Trustee Canada?
Yes.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins?
Yes.
Trustee Luck?
Yes.
Trustee May? Trustee May? Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Wadia?
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley?
Yes.
8 yeses.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Trustee Mueller's report contained action items that we need to consider as a full board. Trustee Mueller, do you have a motion for us?
You have before you a copy of the list of faculty recommended for tenure. By direction of the committee, I move to approve the list of faculty recommended for tenure.
Because it's a motion of the committee, we do not need a second. You have heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the question is on the table. Please, Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins?
Yes.
Trustee Canada?
Yes.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins?
Yes.
Trustee Luck?
Yes.
Trustee May?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Wadia?
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley.
Yes. The motion carries. You have heard the motion, or I'm sorry, Trustee Mueller.
You have before you a copy of the appeal and associated materials for Dr. Nita Basin's appeal of negative tenure decision and the university's response. By direction of the committee, I move to recommend that the Board of Trustees affirm the negative 2019-2020 tenure decision for Dr. Nita Basin.
So you've heard the motion on the Dr. Nita Basin's appeal of negative tenure decision. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, the question on Dr. Nita Basin's appeal of the negative tenure decision. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins.
Yes.
Trustee Canada.
Yes.
Trustee Carroll.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee Luck.
Yes.
Trustee May.
Yes.
Trustee Mueller.
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley.
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
I'm recusing myself from this vote because of conflict of interest.
8 yeses, 1 abstention.
You have before you a copy of Dr. Kleinhahn's CV. By direction of the committee, I move to approve tenure upon appointment for Dr. Kelly Kleinhans.
Thank you. You've heard the motion on tenure upon appointment for Dr. Kelly Kleinhans. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the question on the tenure upon appointment for Dr. Kelly Kleinhans on the table. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins.
Yes.
Trustee Canada.
Yes.
Trustee Carroll.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee Luck.
Yes.
Trustee May.
Yes.
Trustee Mueller.
Yes.
O'Malley.
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Motion carries.
You have before you a copy of Dr. Lean's CV. By direction of the committee, I move to approve tenure upon appointment for Dr. Emily Lean.
Thank you. You've heard the motion on the tenure upon appointment for Dr. Emily Lean. Any discussion? Hearing none, the question on the appointment of tenure for Dr. Emily Lean. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins.
Yes.
Trustee Canada.
Yes.
Trustee Carroll.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee Luck.
Yes.
Trustee May.
Yes.
Trustee Mueller.
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley.
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
The motion carries.
You have before you a copy of Dr. Cronley's CV. By direction of the committee, I move to approve tenure upon appointment for Dr. Maria Cronley.
Thank you. You've heard the motion on the tenure upon appointment for Dr. Maria Cronley. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the question on the appointment of tenure or the tenure appointment for Dr. Maria Cronley. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins.
Yes.
Trustee Canada.
Yes.
Trustee Carroll.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee Luck.
Yes.
Trustee May.
Yes.
Trustee Mueller.
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley.
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you, Trustee Mueller. I now recognize Trustee Jenkins, Chair of the Student Affairs Committee, to give us a report of their committee meeting yesterday.
Chairman O'Malley, thank you for the opportunity to present my report from yesterday's Student Affairs Committee meeting. The committee did not review any action items. The committee did review the following information items related to student counseling service, implementation of telehealth, student affairs practice modifications, and an athletics update. That concludes my report. I move the board approve the minutes of the June 4 Student Affairs Committee as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes of the Student Affairs Committee. Any further discussion? Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins.
Yes.
Trustee Canada.
Yes.
Trustee Carroll.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee Luck.
Yes.
Trustee May.
Yes.
Trustee Mueller.
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley.
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Thank you, Trustee Jenkins. I'd now like to recognize Trustee Canada, Chair of the Audit Committee, to give us a report of their committee meeting yesterday.
Thank you, Chairman O'Malley. Yesterday, the audit committee listened to a presentation regarding the following informational item. It was the internal audit reports released between February 18th, 2020 and May 11th, 2020, with a list of outstanding audit recommendations. That concludes my report, and I move that we approve the minutes of the audit committee meeting held June 4th, 2020 as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thanks. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes of the audit committee. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Mueller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. And thank you, Trustee Kanata, for that report. I'd now like to recognize Trustee Atkins, Chair of the Business and Finance Committee, to give us a report of their committee meeting yesterday as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to present my report from yesterday's Business and Finance Committee meeting. The committee reviewed and approved the following action items. A was the consideration of the estimated budget for the 2019-2020 fiscal year and proposed budget for the 2020 and 2021 fiscal year. And B, consideration of the capital maintenance request for 2021-2022 fiscal year. These items will be presented for your review and action in a few minutes. The committee also reviewed the university's organizational chart. Mr. Robinson discussed the recent changes to the organizational chart that are effective on July the 1st, 2020. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board approve the minutes of the June 4th Business and Finance Board Committee as written.
Thank you, Trustee Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes of the Business and Finance Committee meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Mueller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Minutes are approved. Trustee Atkins' report contained some action items that we need to consider as a full board. Trustee Atkins, do you have a motion for us?
Yes. You have before you a copy of the estimated budget for the 2019-2020 and fiscal year and proposed budget for 2020-2021 fiscal year. The direction of the committee, I move to approve the estimated budget for the 2019-2020 fiscal year and proposed budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
Thank you. You've heard the motion on the consideration of the estimated budget for the 2019-2020 fiscal year, and then the proposed budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the question on the proposed or the consideration of the estimated budget for 2019-2020 and the proposed budget for 2020-2021. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Mueller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Also, trustees, you have before you a copy of the capital maintenance request for the 2020 through 2022 fiscal year. The direction of the committee, I move to approve the capital maintenance request for the 2021 and 2022 fiscal year.
You've heard the motion on the consideration of the capital outlay and maintenance reports for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the question on the consideration of the capital outlay and maintenance requests for 2021-2022 fiscal year. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you for the opportunity to present now. Actually, let me thank Trustee Atkins first for your report. And let me now present my report from yesterday's Executive Committee meeting. The committee reviewed and approved the following action items. The consideration of the Presidential Performance Evaluation for fiscal year 2019-2020, a review of the Presidential Base Compensation Performance Evaluation and Incentive Plan for fiscal year 2020 and 2021, and finally, the consideration of the President's Base Compensation for fiscal year 2020-2021. The above items will be presented for your review and action after the approval of the Executive Committee meeting minutes. That concludes my report, and I move that the board approve the minutes of the June 4th Executive Committee as written. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes of the Executive Committee. Any discussion? Hearing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Miller, Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Before we begin, President White is asked to step out during this discussion and the compensation discussion. So give her a moment to do that. I think I see her leaving the room. You have before you the Presidential Performance Evaluation for fiscal year 2019 and 2020. Before I go on, let me state for the board that in a phone conversation that I had with President White a couple of months ago, she expressed a desire not to receive any potential bonus amount or, in fact, a salary increase in her base compensation. So I wanted you to be aware of her desire in those regards. By direction of the committee, after our meeting yesterday, I move that the board approve the Presidential Performance Evaluation for fiscal 2019-2020. Is there additional discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I might make this comment to that issue. During the last fiscal year, that the incentive is based on performance of the past year. Compensation likewise, however, that performance goes into the following year. I believe it's only fair. We had a successful year, fundraised and set records. Best I remember talking with those folks over there, we had record fundraising for the year, which is due largely to the president's leadership there. I would encourage the board to award at least the incentive portion, and the base compensation would be a separate question. I believe the incentive has already been earned. It's not based on the coming year.
Thank you, Trustee Atkins, for those comments. Is there additional commentary? Hearing none, the question on the approval of the Presidential Performance Evaluation for fiscal year 2018-19. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Mueller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. You have now before you also a Presidential Base Compensation Performance Evaluation and Incentive Plan for fiscal year 2020-2021. By direction of the committee, I move that the board approve the presidential base compensation, performance evaluation, and incentive plan for fiscal year 2020 and 2021. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the question on the approval of the presidential base compensation, performance evaluation, and incentive plan for fiscal year 2020, 2021. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Trustee Wadian.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. You have now before you the presidential base compensation for fiscal year 2020, 2021. Again, I would remind all of you that it is the expressed desire of President White that there not be an increase in her base compensation for the year 2020, 2021. By the direction of the committee, I still move that the board approve the presidential base compensation for fiscal year 2020, 2021. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I strongly encourage trustees to approve as presented. We can't force anybody to do anything, but that is President White's ultimate decision. But I do encourage the board to approve it as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Atkins. I would also add just part of our discussion yesterday and part of the desire all along with the president's base compensation is to bring her or bring the president's compensation, their base compensation, in line with the midpoint of peer institutions that we look at that are in front of all of us. I might also remind us that the figures in front of us are kind of lagging by a year. She's in the midpoint now, but we're talking about the following year. We don't know what these other institutions are doing with respect to their base compensations, but I think as the leader of our institution, it's important that we at least keep her in or around the midpoint. Is there any additional discussion regarding the president's base compensation for 2020, 2021?
Yeah, Chairman O'Malley, I have a comment. As I understood this, as I listened to your committee meeting yesterday, that the figures on the top of this chart show that we would bring our president to the midpoint of 367,800. Her present salary is 353, and so the proposed increase would bring her to the middle of what we know now. My guess is all of these other institutions are going to provide a salary increase to their presidents, which will again put our president close to last. If that's what President White wants and we want to honor that, I'm okay with it. But if we're trying to really get her to the middle of the grouping, we're getting her to the middle of the last reported grouping, which is already. So I just wonder about whether 14,000 is enough or whether we should make it a little more, which continues to go against what she wants. And I apologize for that, but the mathematics of this right now, I'm confused by it. If we're trying to keep her in the middle, I don't believe this will do it.
Chairman O'Malley, if I might add, if President White decides that she would not take the increase this year that we vote in, we need to make a note for next year. The bump would be a whole lot larger next year after we have I would guess after we have an additional year. So if for some reason she doesn't take it this year, next year the bump would be far more than it would be this year, and we need to make sure that we recognize in the notes that she opted not to do it this year. But we need to keep our president competitive with the other institutions.
Thank you, trustees Luck and Jenkins. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the question on the approval of the president's base compensation for fiscal year 2020-2021. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
No.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Mueller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. That concludes the report of the Executive Committee. We're being asked to approve several awards today to individuals who have demonstrated their commitment to Austin Peay. I'd like to introduce Lieutenant General Ron Bailey, Vice President for External Affairs, to provide information on these awards.
Mr. Chairman, the Board of Trustees is asked to approve 3 awards today. The recipients have been selected because of their outstanding contribution to Austin Peay State University and their communities. The first award is a Philanthropist of the Year. Mr. Joe and Kathy Maynard have surpassed $1.4 million in giving to Austin Peay State University since their commitments in December 2017. Though much of their giving has been designated to athletics, Mr. and Mrs. Maynard have provided Austin Peay with sponsorship opportunities in their business, Echo Power Engineering. They have suite membership for both football and baseball seasons, and they show their support at Austin Peay basketball games. They attend many events throughout the year and are avid supporters of the university as a whole. The second award is the Govs Who Lead Through Military Service. Austin Peay State University alumnus Lieutenant Colonel Thomas E. Mercer Sr., a 1984 graduate, the retired combat veteran, currently serves as the manager of the Small Business Program Office of the United States Army Corps of Engineers, the Memphis District. Lieutenant Colonel Mercer had a distinguished career in acquisition, and after retirement was a business owner of a Captain D's for 10 years. In his current capacity, he is responsible for executing the mission of the Small Business Program Office and taking appropriate action to facilitate small business enterprises and federally sponsored programs. Colonel Mercer was the first president of the Austin Peay Military Alumni Chapter. The third and final award, Governors Who Lead Through Service. Mr. and Mrs. Tom and Susie Perry. Tom and Susie Perry are both 1973 graduates of Austin Peay State University. They have faithfully served the university through their continued commitment to student success. They established the Perry Intervention Fund as an emergency fund intended to help students with unexpected needs. They have also spent a number of years organizing a trip for selected students from the College of Business to tour business and industry in Memphis, Tennessee. They are active members of the Tower Club, and Mr. Perry was a founding member of the Austin Peay State University College of Business Advisory Board. Mr. and Ms. Perry are truly symbolic of governors who lead through service to their university and community. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my brief.
Thank you, General Bailey. You have heard the explanation from General Bailey, and we will take these up as a group. Is there a motion to approve the following awards? 1, Joe and Kathy Maynard as Austin Peay State University Philanthropists of the Year. 2 is retired Lieutenant Colonel Thomas E. Mercer Sr. as recipient of the Govs Who Lead Through Military Service Award. And finally, the Tom and Susie Perry as recipients of the Govs Who Lead Through Service Award. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It is moved and seconded that we approve these award recipients. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the question on the approval of the awards. Secretary, please call the roll.
Trustee Atkins,
Yes.
Trustee Canada,
Yes.
Trustee Carroll,
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee Luck,
Yes.
Trustee May,
Yes.
Trustee Mueller,
Yes.
Trustee O'Malley,
Yes.
Trustee Wadia.
Yes.
Thank you again, General Bailey. The motion carries. At this time, I'd like to now recognize Dr. Carol Clark, Assistant Vice President for Community and Government Relations, to give us a report on items of interest coming from the most recent legislative session of the Tennessee General Assembly.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair O'Malley, and good morning, trustees. Prior to their recess due to the COVID pandemic, the General Assembly passed a small number of laws that impact university policies and procedures. We're taking the necessary steps to implement any required changes in advance of the effective date of each law. After recessing due to the COVID pandemic, the members have returned to Nashville and will be working on an amended budget next week to account for changes in funds expected due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If there are additional laws with significant implications for the university passed, in the remainder of the session, I'll provide you with that information at the next meeting of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clark, for that report. I'd now like to invite Dr. Eric Norman, Vice President for Student Affairs, to provide an update on the Division of Student Affairs. Dr. Norman.
Good morning, and thank you. In response to COVID-19, there are a number of changes that were made to address our students and their needs. The SOS Food Pantry initially was working as it was normally, but we had to change the way we were operating. We provided quarantine bags for students that were showing signs of illness or had been exposed to or was helping someone that was ill. These bags included a specific list of food to meet the generic 3-day grocery list for one person. We had 10 quarantine bags taken during the first 2 weeks, but pantry users were still able to access the interior pantry if they wore a mask and gloves, which were provided. After social distancing protocols were put in place, the food pantry moved to online orders for students, and we closed down our free thrift store access. The online order systems keep an updated list of items available in the pantry, and students can place an order and then select a pickup time and day. Students ready to pick up their groceries pull up to the front of the building, call the office, and our staff brings the items out to the student's car. This reduces the proximity of the students to our building and to our staff. We saw 123 orders in April to mid-May. Food shortages were the main frustration for the SOS Food Pantry. Fortunately, several large donations came through from local organizations in the beginning of the pandemic, but those donations were not able to access the bread, meat, eggs, ramen, pasta, and canned vegetables. Local grocery stores limited the amount of food items that could be purchased, so while the pantry has a substantial amount of money to purchase food in Healthy Donor Group, access to food was a limiting factor. In regards to our free thrift store and green room, during the pandemic, the green room stopped taking clothing donations due to shortage and cleanliness concerns. The green room will start posting on social media several times every week to provide access to its items remotely. Emergency funds, the SOS emergency funds had provided emergency funding to students totaling $6,419 in the previous year prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. During the start of the move to online classes, Chris Phillips in the advancement office teamed up with the SOS Food Pantry emergency funds and raised over $70,000 for this funding source. The emergency funds were promoted through the COVID-19 campus emails, and applications for funding stayed consistent with about 20 applications per week, with the highest week seeing 44 applications. Each student who applies is checked with financial aid to determine their aid ceiling and eligibility. Student balances, enrollment statuses are also checked. Students must then email a bill or invoice to show the specific bill that they need assistance in paying. Each student is called by a member of the CSLCE staff and is checked on, and they include plans for future with finances, how they're doing right now, resources available to help, and being in contact with the advancement office. Funds are only released after this phone call occurs. These phone calls allowed a deeper connection to be made with the students and strengthen their support network. After funds were released via direct deposit, students were required to send in their receipts of the bills that they paid, and all the transactions were sent to Financial Aid Weekly for these gifts to be coded and included in aid. 40% of the students who applied for emergency funds then went on to make food pantry orders, so that was a good connection. From March to May 14th, emergency funds released $37,000 to 104 students. The most frequent request was for rent assistance, followed by utilities help and some medical assistance. 169 students had applied for funding. 4.7% of the students who applied for funds were denied based upon the reason for applying it, including court costs, laptops. 31% of the students applied for but never responded to emails or phone calls as of yet, but we continue to follow up with them. And on average, each student received 3 emails and calls from the staff and a resource document with financial literacy, job leads, and community resources. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Norman. It's a lot of good activities going on in a challenging time, so thank you. At this point, I'd like to suggest that we take a break and reconvene at 10 a.m. Thank you, everybody. Mel or Carol, are we?
Yes, we're ready, and Dr. Youngers is here.
Yeah, I see. Great. So thank you, everyone, for getting back on time. And I'd now like to invite Dr. Sharon Younger, President of Younger Associates, to share the results of Austin Peay State University's Economic Impact Study. Dr. Younger?
Thank you and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with the board to share the impact of Austin Peay State University, which I think you'll find to be very impressive. So I'll jump right in the interest of time, and if you would bring up the next slide, please. Our economic impact analysis is conducted, if you're wondering why you engaged in this exercise, there are a number of reasons. The only real way to understand how many jobs are associated with the university, how many dollars you generate for the economy, and how much tax revenue, that even though you're a nonprofit, that you bring into the economy is through this analysis. We often do these analyses to help organizations of various types attract funding because when people understand the economic significance of an organization, obviously they can see a better return on investment, and that often reassures elected officials if they're being asked to assist in a project. But most importantly, an economic impact analysis allows you to better tell your story because it's hard for many people to visualize all the ways that an organization such as a university touches the economy and drives the economy of the local area where it's located. In the next slide, I just wanted to show you that we work primarily from data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And the economic impact analysis system was established in 1973. And the data that goes into an economic impact analysis system is very robust. It requires the BEA to collect continuously data on outflows from every industry category. And the system was originally intended to determine what the impact of military base closings would be on a regional economy. If we closed this base, i.e. if we closed this university did not exist, what would happen to the economy around it? So we've been building on that system since 1973. My company, Younger Associates, works regularly with the BEA. And in the next slide, I'll show you what they are famous for. If you haven't heard of their multiplier system, you probably have heard of the gross domestic product, or the GDP. And the Bureau of Economic Analysis is the organization responsible for providing that data on an ongoing basis. They also calculate the consumer price index. So they are a repository of an enormous amount of data that we utilize and work with them to turn into economic impact analysis for individual organizations and institutions. In the next slide, I'll give you just one more peek behind the curtain at the data. They produce multipliers for the economic impact analysis system, and you've probably heard of multipliers, but you probably have heard more myths, unless you're an economist, about multipliers than reality. They're very specific. There are 6 types of multipliers for every industry sector, and they are broken down to every county, parish, and district level in the United States, and they are completely updated every 2 years. We've been using them for almost 25 years, and where we've been able to track the analyses in many instances, we found them to be highly predictive of economic output and jobs. We found them to be very conservative in how they project tax revenue generation, which is as they should be. Next slide, please. In addition to the multipliers, we bring into the analysis very specific local data, which we collect from the institution and then also collect from other repositories on the local economy. So we capture jobs, benefit, wages, capital investment. In an educational institution, as in your case, we spend a lot of time digging into the residential and commuter spending data. And we also look very carefully at visitor events such as sporting and other events, because those are large generators of additional dollars that people don't always think of. The reason we look so hard at residential and commuter spending data is universities are different than most other economic entities. If you had, for example, a manufacturing process going on in the Clarksville area, and you were making washers and dryers. Well, you create a washer and dryer, that washer and dryer has a value, it goes out and it's sold. Obviously, the product that you are turning out has much more intrinsic value. The students are out there in the economy spending money and creating economic activity the entire time that you're educating them. And then once you release them into the economy and the greater world, they continue to have an economic impact. So your product has a much broader impact. And we base our analysis on that, as well as the RIMS data and the local data. So that hopefully gives you just a little bit of background and grounding in the analysis, that it is very conservative in terms of how it looks at many things, and I'll point out some of those areas. So moving ahead, we will go ahead and show you the impact. The impact primarily comes from 3 streams. The university's operations itself, your payroll, your purchases, your capital investments on an ongoing basis. Then you also have some captive university contractors and vendors, and they work specifically because of and solely because of the university. So they're part of the impact, even though they're not part of your overall budget. And then, as I already mentioned, student spending and then visitor spending are very important aspects as well. So looking at those revenue streams, I will show you on the next slide the summary of the economic impact. And based on the analysis, we find that the annual economic impact from operations and student spending is $333 million, 333.4. In addition to this, we find that there are almost 2,500 jobs that are directly and indirectly supported by all of the operations and spending related to the university. In addition to the wages paid of $139, almost $140 million to those jobs. Other activities create locally $5.5 million in local tax revenues to the city and county. I'll stop and say that this impact is very significant, but it is the impact as it directly occurs within the county. Now, the impact, if we calculated it for the larger Tennessee and Kentucky region, would be larger, but this is the local impact where the majority of the impact occurs. So we're looking at impact in terms of 2,500 jobs, 333.4 million in impact, and 5.5 million in taxes generated for various local government entities, not including federal government. The next slide shows you a little bit of a breakdown on these numbers, and it shows you how the impact is derived from the university operations, student spending, your vendor and contractor services. The other category there is capital investment, which are your major expenditures, investments in the campus. And you've had some significant investments. We looked back over a 4-year period to create a 4-year average, to create an average to go into the annual impact. And that average has been about 15 million. The second column, you can see the jobs supported. So you can see the operations of the university itself, not only your direct employment, but all of the other jobs that have to exist, whether it is a local retailer or service provider or business support services. There are a lot of jobs that exist in the economy because your spending flows through the economy, and that's what the indirect jobs reflect that are there. And then also the local taxes generated in the third column. I'm going to take you through a couple of quick snapshots of this that dig just a little deeper in the next 2 slides. So in the next slide, you can see some of the calculations related to the university operations. The operations for the year 2019, the university had an annual revenue / budget of $168 million. And you can see how that flows through the system to create an economic impact based on the multiplier of 265 million. And then you can see the employment as it flows through the multiplier system as well. Not going to dig into this. I just wanted you to see, that we begin with your actual spending, flow it through the model with the multipliers and the local data to generate economic impact, employment, and also the tax revenues. In the next slide, you'll see that we did a similar calculation based on the annual average capital investment, which you'll see in this particular slide. Again, we use the appropriate multipliers that are specific to your region, specific to the economic activity that we're calculating. Next slide is important. It's the student and visitor spending impact. This is probably more important right now because at the time that we're dealing with, and these times when you do not have things going on campus, when the students are not present, when the visitors that you attract are not coming in, this has an enormous downstream impact on the region because the spending from students and visitors is a significant portion, 46.5 million per year that would be coming into the economy. So you can see the importance to spending, tourism, hotel, motel, retail industry related to just this one revenue stream, which is the one that is being most highly affected right now. The other thing I'll say about this is we feel that this is probably a bit understated in the analysis that we're doing right now. We feel like the actual footprint of impact from visitor spending is higher than what we were able to capture. And that's simply because this is the first economic impact analysis the university has done in many years. And there was not a great deal of available data that had been captured over the years on all of the visitors to campus, the types of events. And I think one of the things that will be an outcome of this analysis is that going forward, you'll probably do a more detailed analysis of what student and visitor, or particularly visitor and event spending is, so that if you do an analysis again in the future, I would not be surprised if this number didn't jump fairly significantly. Moving on to the next slide. If you didn't do an economic impact analysis, what you would know is what your employment is, how many students you have, those sorts of numbers that you've been able to talk about over a number of years. But I want to show you a lot of the difference. One of the things that the university tracks is how much that you spend with local vendors, and that tracking identified $2.6 million. Well, you can see that if your total economic impact is 333.4 million, your known local direct spending captures only a very small part of that. So the economic impact analysis fills out the picture and gives you a better idea of what the actual economic impact is. And so the next slide, which is related to this as well, if you look at just the jobs and wages, just that portion of it, which we did, and we spread that around to how those jobs and wages impact your local businesses. This is a little bit of the storytelling picture. You can see that food and grocery stores, just from the jobs and wages, receive over 14 million. The housing industry, over 19 million. Transportation industry, almost 19 million. Insurance industry, 12.8 million. So this personalizes it to a particular category of business within the local economy. And this is not the total impact, but this is the impact that the jobs and wages that you create have on those businesses. That spending of your employment base really supports a number of local businesses in an enormous way year by year. So this takes that 333 million and breaks it down into a story that's easy to understand up to other businesses in the community. There's one more measure of impact on the next slide that I will tell you about. And this goes back to the fact that you're producing a product that has a long-lasting impact on the economy. And that is, you are taking an individual and you are providing them with the knowledge and tools to have a greater impact on the economy. So for each student that you take from being a high school graduate to being a college graduate, you increase the potential impact that person has for a 25-year career from being $3.5 million per person to being $5.9 million per person. Study after study over a long span of years shows and captures the difference of the impact on the economy based on education. And so in addition to your own ongoing impact that you generate, there's a much broader, more long-lasting impact as you prepare other people to be more productive and to provide more value to the economy. So that measure is important as well. Now, as I wrap up, I will tell you this, that sometimes you hear an impact analysis and you hear a number and you go, well, that's a great number, 334 million. Is that a great impact? How does that really fit in the world of impact? I'll give you a couple of measures. You probably are familiar with Berea College. We recently finished a study for them that was covered nationally about their impact. And their annual impact is $197.5 million as a point of comparison. Campbellsville University in Kentucky, their most recent study that we did for them was $137 million. But here's probably the most relevant comparison to your 333.4 million. Within the last couple of months, we did an analysis for a potential manufacturer that was looking to locate in the region. That particular manufacturer looked at the Clarksville area. They had 600 jobs. And so we did a calculation. So a 600 job manufacturing facility would have an annual economic impact of 123 million. So that gives you a benchmark for your 333.4 million that you have annually on the local economy. So that's the highlights of our impact report. We've provided the university with a detailed report as well as an illustrated report that conveys just the highlights. So that's my presentation, and I will stop and turn this back over to the presenter. And if there's time, I'm sure I can take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Younger, for a great presentation. I do have a quick question. It relates to the information you provided at the end. Is it safe to say then that a university around 11,000 students would produce an economic impact of 333 million? Or is it really more specific to that university and that community?
It is specific to the university and the community, because there are many dynamics that have to do with a university's programs, the ratio of the students who are on campus versus off campus. Also, the graduation rates factor into that. And then also the economy itself. How many opportunities are there for people to interact, spend, and get their goods and services from that economy? So it's a symbiotic relationship. It has to do with the dynamics of the university, has to do with the dynamics of the economy where you're located. So each economic impact is individual to the university.
Thank you very much. It's fascinating stuff. Any other comments or questions? Thank you again. At this time, I'd like to recognize President White to give her report and also to report on any interim items. President White.
Thank you, Chairman O'Malley, and thank you to the trustees for your leadership and your thoughtful work on behalf of the university. I've talked with many of you over the last few days and actually just throughout the last few years, and you are always a ready help, and I thank you so much for that. Leadership always matters, but your leadership is especially important now when our nation is dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, economic uncertainties, discrimination, and civil unrest. I'm getting whiplash a little bit, and I'm watching my stock portfolio, and Trustee Atkins and I have been talking this morning. It's like, oh, it's down. No, it's up. It's good. It's bad. And, you know, so it's kind of the news at the moment. And so it's just an interesting time, but we are very fortunate also to have wonderful leadership across the university. And I want to thank Dr. Karen Meisch for assuming the role of interim provost earlier this week. She's been interim provost for 5 days, and her first business was dealing with preparing for the board. And so that, plus preparing for us to come back to the fall a classroom, has been a heavy lift, and she's done a great job. She leads the College of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, and has done so for the last 3 years, and is very qualified to lead academic affairs at this time. She will serve until our new provost, Dr. Cronley, Maria Cronley, begins July 6th to be exact. Dr. Cronley has served as provost and vice president for academic affairs at Ohio Northern University since 2017. And since she's been there, the university's experienced consecutive years of enrollment growth, and she established a student success center, and they have a lot of the same values that we have in terms of our approach to student success. Prior to her time at Ohio Northern, she served Miami University in an array of academic and leadership positions, and know also that she's had experience with military communities living close to she was at Wright State. So I look forward to working with her, and I know she'll be a great addition. And until then, I'm breathing very well and sleeping at night because Dr. Meisch is at the helm. So it is a challenging time for the university, and it is for all universities, and I know it has been for you and all of our communities. And some of that has to do with the uncertainties that we face. And know also that as we make decisions, we're making decisions in close consultation with epidemiologists and infectious disease experts, with state and local officials dealing with public health. We're talking to NCAA and national leaders who are experts in viruses and their spread and how to deal with them. This particular situation has been very challenging because it truly is a novel coronavirus, and that we're facing things that we haven't yet faced. And so we're trying to do what we really can to make sure that we act on the best data that we have. And it may not be the data that we're reading on social media. We're trying to make decisions based on data that we're getting from the experts. So keep that in mind as we go forward. COVID-19 has definitely affected the way we live and the way that we conduct business. And it required us to change our teaching methods the latter part of the spring and this summer. And when I say it required us, I use that word loosely because it's not me doing that word. The urgency and the timing of the shift brought a terrible burden, a great burden to the faculty and the students. And I know that you will understand that because you are in your own businesses and communities and dealing with your families. But we've got faculty members who had to get prepared on a very short notice to shift everything online. At the same time, their children lost their childcare or they lost their schools, and they're still expected to help those children work. And in some case, when I say work, I mean work on their schoolwork. in some cases, their spouses lost their jobs and their parents got sick, and they're really doing a remarkable job at really heavy lifting at a time that I don't know we fully understand. And so I have to say, I am incredibly proud of them, and also our students, who many of whom did not enjoy that experience of taking online classes. Now, we have a lot of robust online classes that have been developed and designed in conjunction with professional instructional designers. We have a great department in that area. But a lot of what we had to do was not going through this robust development. It literally was, how can I take this content and access students and give them access to me in a week's time? And we've done it the same way you've done their businesses. But there's a lot of content and testing and technological requirements. And so I'm very proud of what those members of our community have done. They moved thousands of sections online in just a few days' time. Today's Campus Spotlight highlighted the efforts of our talented students and employees to help others in this trying time. And I'm so proud of the Austin Peay family and how they stepped up. I have to update Mike Wilson's data. He texted me this morning. You met Mike a few sessions ago when he gave a spotlight on GIS, the Geographic Information Systems. But he told me this morning that they have produced 15,000 face shields, 15,000 face shields, and 150,000 sheets of acetate. That is an incredible lift. But I wanted to tell you the story behind that. I got a call one afternoon, late in the afternoon, from somebody in the state who said, get your folks together and see if there's something that universities can do to help us with personal protective equipment, protection equipment. And I said, okay. I was leaving for the day, because again, this was late in the evening, not late in the evening, but late in the afternoon. And I ran into General Scott Brower in the hall. And I said, I'm going to work with some academic folks, but I would like for you to contact GIS tonight and see if they have ideas on what they can do. That was one evening. By the next day, in the afternoon, the governor had this shield in his hand. I mean, we're talking about maybe a 16-hour period of time. I don't think there was any sleeping in between. And so they responded immediately. And that's how Austin Peay became the state leader. And so there are other schools helping and partnering, and they're doing a wonderful job. We're all in it together. But what I love about Austin Peay, it's really what Dr. Sullivan said, it's the Austin Peay way. And that's exactly what GIS Center did. Decisions on how we moved and flexed were not made lightly. They were not made in a vacuum. Many members of the campus community came together to advise on instruction, dining, sanitation, technology, and business practices. I want to really thank Michael Cassitz, our Assistant Vice President for Public Safety, and his COVID-19 task force, 33 members of our community who met almost daily, I mean really most weeks daily, for about 10 weeks. And they met to deal with emerging situations and then planning for the fall. And so we've had wonderful people who were looking at all aspects of our operation to determine how we could continue to move in a very fast way. And I told you last time, I think, that I'd also put together a long-range planning committee led by General Bailey and Vice President Robinson. And I will get that report is being vetted right now by various members of the academic community. It's been vetted by some others already, and we'll get that feedback by probably by later today or by next week. And they're looking at really long-term solutions, what might be impacting us in the next 2 years. And so we've got really smart people doing great work to advise us. In yesterday's Business and Finance Committee meeting, Vice President Robinson reported on budget implications of the pandemic and associated economic factors. And although it's not going to be an easy year, I don't think it will be for anyone, I have confidence that we'll be able to meet our core mission even as we make cuts in the short term. But I wanted to let you know some of the actions that we've taken since the last board meeting. And this is a report really to give you some confidence and also to give you an opportunity to ask questions. We monitor guidance provided by the Tennessee Department of Health, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We've been in contact with city, county, and state leadership and followed their respective safer at home orders. These orders led us to ask employees who could telecommute to do so. We've had some essential employees and some that cannot telecommute, such as our physical plant and public safety departments. They went to skeletal crews and they alternated their on-campus presence to mitigate the spread of the virus. So if we did have an active case, we wouldn't have to quarantine the entire department, but we could still have some people in reserve so they could keep the university running. We use the term essential employees, and I have to say we're all essential. I can vouch that the folks at Austin Peay have been really critical to us moving forward. But when I use it in this context, I'm talking about people who had to keep our streets safe, our campus safe, make sure they check the buildings, make sure that our grass was cut, those kinds of things. Mid-March, we canceled all study abroad programs and later issued refunds to the students. We recommended that students who could move out of the residence halls, and all but about 200 left. Now, you heard a little bit different number from Vice President Norman, and that's because initially, at that first wave, we had all but about, we had under 400 who were on campus. And then we got that down to about 200. And then we got it down to under 100. And then right now it's about 25. But we expect about 100 on campus this summer. Some international students could not return home, and we had other students whose homes were not more safe than our campus, and we felt an obligation to allow those students to stay. Some universities were not able to provide any support for students in the dorms, and I'm proud of Austin Peay's decisions to try to support the students that we could. Those who stayed, we separated them so they didn't share bedrooms. And at the end of March, Chartwells reduced some dining options and operating hours due to having fewer students and almost no employees on campus. We're working hard to accommodate prospective students as well, and we've made temporary adjustments to our admission policies. For example, we waived the assessment of the ACT, SAT, and GRE scores for incoming students because the national testing centers were closed. And we didn't want students, prospective students, disadvantaged because they couldn't issue a test. And so our admission team also hosted virtual tours and ROSE, our registration, orientation, and welcome events. And that was a heroic effort as well, trying to engage. You all know how challenging it is today for us to communicate like we like to. We've had our business handled, and I'm pleased with the work. But we enjoy, I believe, we have a community here, and we enjoy interacting and working together and rolling our sleeves up together and showing our culture and our personalities and asking about, noticing things about people and asking how the families are. That's been the same challenge that our admissions team has faced in trying to connect with prospective students. But they've done a very good job at doing that, and we've had a lot of students tell us that they're coming. And we won't have really good enrollment numbers until probably the end of July. And that's because I think some of it just has to do with the pandemic itself and people wanting to know what fall looks like. But I also think some of it is that our students very often are later in registering than many, and a lot of that has to do with financial issues. So at the end of April, we surveyed students, faculty, and staff about the university's response to COVID-19 to inform our future decision-making. We wanted to know what our campus community members most needed, such as time management training or access to mental health resources. And our human resources department has done a phenomenal job, led by Executive Director Shireen Gilliam-Holmes. And I've just loved watching what they've done, because they've tried to reach out to all of our constituents, all of our employees, faculty or staff, and said, do you have the technology you need? Do you need some kind of programming to help your children so that you can work on this other side? And they have produced programming with our faculty and staff to actually help people be more productive at home. They've led us in guided breathing exercises. I do have to say, I got tickled. We had a very well-received town hall earlier this week, and we were led twice in these breathing exercises where you breathe deeply in and you hold it for 7 seconds, and then you exhale. And I told A.D. Harrison after that, I loved it. And then I thought, oh, was that a COVID test? Were they wondering if I could hold my breath the whole 7 seconds, you know? But they've really reached out to our community, and I've been proud of that. One of the things I have hated more than anything is postponing our spring commencement ceremony. It was absolutely necessary, but we're not letting commencement go. And so we are planning multiple smaller ceremonies early August, and all students who graduated this spring will be allowed to participate in a summer or winter commencement ceremony. We didn't want to let the original date go by, May 8th, so we hosted a virtual celebration, and commencement committee, very creative commencement committee led by AVP Carol Clark, invited graduating students to submit photos of themselves depicting their time on campus. And the registrar's office is very involved in commencement, of course, and they were part of that, and our PR team getting that montage done. And you saw that. We played the video for you yesterday before your committee meetings, excuse me. Many of our students are facing financial challenges, and we created a special scholarship for students enrolled in summer courses. The APSU COVID-19 Relief Scholarship covers a portion of educational expenses for students taking classes this summer. That scholarship was open to all students except those enrolled in dual enrollment classes because they already received a reduced tuition rate. The university received $10 million from the CARES Act, and half of that funding went directly to our students. The Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, or HERF, specified that the funds were to be awarded to students to provide emergency financial assistance to eligible students for expenses related to the disruption of campus operations due to coronavirus, such as food, housing, and technology. We prioritized that funding by awarding a bigger portion to students with the greatest financial needs, and that was also the guidance we received from the Department of Education. We are planning to be back on campus this fall, but we will be monitoring and following guidelines from the CDC, the national, state, and local medical and safety experts. And you were sent a plan yesterday that was approved yesterday. It's the 4 stages: high risk, moderate risk, low risk, and normal operations. And know that we may be having to flex among those options and those scenarios for campus in the long term. I hope it's not the long term, but the decisions to move among those levels will be made in conjunction with public health officials. Our COVID-19 task force and the Strategic Planning Integration Task Force will continue. They are not going to continue to work as a task force, but they will continue to lead their expertise, lend their expertise as we make specific decisions going forward. Our focus is on the safety of our students, faculty, and staff, and our commitment to academic quality. Employees who've been working remotely will begin returning to campus mid-June. And so that's just in a few days. For the foreseeable future, we will be taking actions to reduce density on campus. That means some employees will continue to work remotely, others will stagger their work schedules. Some courses will be taught face-to-face, some online, and some courses will be a mix of face-to-face and online. The benefit we have now is that we've got a little bit of time for faculty to use the resources that we have to help them put things in a way online that would be a better experience for them and their students. Finally, I want to talk to you about Austin Peay as a culture, as a community. I've been told that universities our size are like cities. And in a way that is. I could be the mayor for a day maybe. We have a transportation and police department. We have a health department. We have an IT department. We certainly have to keep our services operational and serve our constituents. but it's not the description I like the best, because I think we have a culture like a family. And I don't know all of our 11,000 plus students. I've met most of our employees. We're hiring new employees over the years, and I meet them as I can, but I don't know all of them. I know some of our employees very, very closely know them, and they work in all aspects of the university life. But we act as a family, and I just wanted you to know that we are putting a stake in the ground as a steward of place that we've discussed and that we are proud to be. So society is reeling because of racism and violence in our cities that threaten our communities. And I know that part of that situation is certainly fueled by our economic challenges and, of course, the COVID-19 situation. But we're committed to fostering a safe campus climate, one that values diverse experiences, ideas, and individual differences. Some members of our community are really hurting because they don't feel valued or safe. And we are going to model respect and civility. We're going to be a safe place to discuss, disagree, and learn from one another. I'm so grateful for the role that public education plays in society, not just an economic impact, but an economic necessity to help people learn to deal with issues civilly. I'm grateful for the role public education has played in the lives of my family members and my own family, and in my own life. And I believe that Austin Peay can be a leader. We will invest time and effort in helping our institution, our city, and our state make things better for everyone. So you know me well, all of you know me very well, and I use the word love more than most people, but I don't use it lightly. And I'm going to say it more. I've made a decision to use that word intentionally. Now, of course, my words have to be followed with action. But I wanted to say, I love our students, and I do, and I want the best for them. I want the best for their families. I love my colleagues, and I'm thrilled when they're doing well. And I'm sad when they're not. And I love our community. And I was reading about love earlier this week, and one version goes like this. Love does not traffic in shame and disrespect, nor selfishly seek its own honor. Love is not easily irritated or quick to take offense. Love celebrates honesty and finds no delight in what is wrong. Love is a safe place for shelter. It never stops believing the best for others. Love never takes failure as defeat, for it never gives up. And neither will I, and neither will Austin Peay. I want to thank all of our faculty, staff, and students for stepping up. Their work has been heroic, and you can be proud of Austin Peay. Thank you all for your guidance. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your support. We will continue to serve our students, faculty, and staff in our community in a way that brings value. You can look in your materials to look at the items that I've taken since our last meeting. And probably the one that I'm most excited about is that we have appointed Dr. Maria Cronley as the provost beginning July 6th, and that was confirmed by Chairman O'Malley on your behalf. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. White, as always, for your inspirational words, and especially at this time that we're going through. I know the board shares my sentiment that we are fortunate to have you, and we're fortunate to have you in the role that you're in as our president. As we go through these kind of uncharted waters, I have no doubt at all that Austin Peay will not only survive, but be much better as we come out on the other side. So thank you your faculty, your administration, and the staff for all that you've done through this pandemic, certainly, and as we get ready to welcome a new class at Austin Peay this fall. With that, are there any other comments or questions before we adjourn? Okay, thank you. As a reminder, our next regularly scheduled meeting will take place September 17th and 18th, 2020, hopefully in person. And with that, I move that the meeting adjourn. Can I hear a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded that the meeting adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Everybody's on mute. The ayes have it, I think, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Bye.
Okay.